Um, let's go to prime time for our final marquee game. LSU at Texas A&M. My biggest regret of the weekend was not betting LSU plus 3.5. I know that you
Yeah.
did. I mean, I make it three, and I'm higher than the market on Texas. I'm higher on everyone than Texas A&M coming into the year. But I knew that it was going to come down, and this game's it's very difficult for me to handicap because Texas A&M is a very tricky team to figure out. I mean, they look like gods against Missouri. It comes down to Connor Wegman, right? Then you have some games where you had Marcel Reed at quarterback. Wegman, the first game of the year against Notre Dame, we saw how bad he looked. Against Missouri, he was flawless.
Mhm.
Against Mississippi State, not so much. Which version of Connor Wegman do we get? They've also had some offensive line injuries. Can LSU take advantage of that? And meanwhile, LSU, it's like, yeah, I think that they're trending up. Their defense is playing better under a new defensive coordinator. Whit Weeks, some of their young guys on the defensive line. Whit Weeks is playing like at an all-American level at linebacker.
Yep.
But yeah, you also have to keep in mind, I mean, this is like the third straight big game for LSU too, and it's going on the road in a hostile environment. They played an overtime game against Ole Miss, and they went up to Arkansas. Tough spot. For what it's worth, though, I think Brian Kelly has been extremely successful in this spot. He hasn't been great at LSU against ranked teams on the road, but for his career, he is 14-3-1 against the spread on a road trip, second consecutive game or more on the road when his team's on normal rest or less. His last loss came back in 2006 with Central Michigan. So he's been good in this spot for what it's worth. But LSU, you got to keep in mind, like they're they should have lost to South Carolina. Got bailed out by the refs. They should have lost to Ole Miss. They had to, a couple fourth down conversions late. Ole Miss had some injuries, and so like this is a team that's very close to having three losses. Now Texas A&M could have lost to Arkansas, a team that LSU blew out. Texas A&M only beat Bowling Green at home by 6. So it's these two teams are tough for me to crack. I have Texas A&M. I have LSU power rated slightly ahead of Texas A&M, but the home field in this spot is pretty big, which is why I'm around a field goal. This game is huge. I mean, the winner of this driver's seat for a college football playoff berth, sole possession of first place in the SEC. I, I think the key to this game is two things. Which version of Connor Wegman do you get?
Mhm.
Do you get the good or bad? And number two, the battle in the trenches on the other side of the ball. LSU's offense is not explosive. It's like Nussmeier, who's been great, just like efficiently moving the ball, making all the right reads. He's been great at avoiding sacks and moving the ball down efficiently. Can the Texas A&M defensive line, which is very talented, beat a very talented LSU offensive line, especially when it comes to pass protection, and get Nussmeier behind the sticks and get this LSU offense behind the chains? Get them into known passing downs, third and long. Uh, that's the key for me because the LSU offense isn't explosive. They're going to have to methodically move the ball down the field. Texas A&M does a really good job taking away explosive plays with their safeties. They have a really good corner to match up with Kyron Lacey. So, how many negative plays can they create to kill drives? That matchup in the trenches is huge. I think those are the two keys to the game. Right now, I would lean Texas A&M. Now the line's down to 1. I have a Texas A&M to make the college football playoff ticket. So I'll be rooting for Texas A&M, but hard team to trust. Not
Right.
sure I trust LSU, but definitely would have liked to have a 3.5 in my pocket. What are you seeing here?
I make this game Texas A&M -1. I snap bet LSU plus 3.5 on open. I would have played it at 3. I'd have played it at 2.5. Shout out to our college football editor, Pete Rudin. I wrote this up early Tuesday morning, and then I sat on it for 48 hours because I wanted to see where the market was going to go. I had no clue we were going to down to 2.5. Boom. Then today, a lot of movement down to 1, exactly where we power rate the number. The advantage to me still lies with LSU, and it's a small advantage. So if you're going to bet this game, I would make it one of my smaller size bets, but I still would go with LSU. I think it's a true coin flip situation. Both defenses are in the top 10 from a havoc perspective. Texas A&M, top 10 in defensive line yards. They're going to be able to shut down freshman running back Caden Durham. Kind of been hit or miss. He did have 3 touchdowns against Arkansas, but he's still not creating a lot of space after he gets touched. 3.2 yards after first contact. And the LSU defense, though, when you go to that side, they're emerging. You just kind of look at their numbers on paper and you say, this is not who they are. You kind of have to go in. And that's why I tweeted out a picture of the Maryland eye on defense. I mean, Blake Baker got into his bag against Arkansas. And what he did is he lined up four defenders in a row, like a Maryland eye formation on defense over the center. Why did he do that? Because he wanted a quarterback spy on Taylon Green, but he didn't want Arkansas to identify which defender that was going to be. There's some masterclass defensive calls coming out of this LSU down here, which I was really impressed with. The LSU defense has been generating a pass rush, and the Texas A&M pass blocking is 34th. So I do think there can be some hands in Connor Weigman's face. Edge Braden Swinson is going to be all over Connor Weigman, which will bring his numbers down because he's not been as good under pressure this season. It's been a factor.
DeSantis might be out to one of their best offensive linemen.
That is another part of this, why I think LSU still has the edge, even though I make this Texas A&M -1. I think the other thing too is when you look at this Texas A&M defense, it's always been known that Elko is in love with the 4-2-5, right? That's what he was at Notre Dame when he was an assistant for Brian Kelly. That's what brought him down to Texas A&M, Duke, here 4-2-5, or you can call it 2-4-5, wherever you want to call the edges. But that's what he runs. What A&M tries to do, what Elko tries to do, he always wants to create pressure with 4. He wants to have 5 back in the secondary. He wants 2 corners and he wants cover 3. Garrett Nussmeier loves cover 3. And why does he love cover 3? Because he's an underneath passer. If you look at LSU, they're outside the top 100 in creating pass explosives. Kyron Lacey just has not been explosive on the outside whatsoever. They have not been able to get behind defenses, and they are not going to be able to get behind Texas A&M. But they are able to hit the middle against 2 linebackers here. Damian Sanford, Torian York, not been good in coverage grading whatsoever. And that is exactly where Nussmeier is going to target. That's why I love the prop of Aaron Anderson to go over, I believe I saw on the market, 38.5 yards. His
Taylor could have a big day too.
Yeah, his target share is going through the roof. I expect Nussmeier to be clean with his offensive line, especially from the tackle position, keeping this ferocious Texas A&M defensive line off of him. By the way, Nussmeier much better in a crowded pocket than Connor Weigman has been. Big advantage there. So another issue is just the lack of tackling by Texas A&M. If you go look at PFF, they're 65th in tackle grading and blowout. And you really, it's like, I just don't understand why Texas A&M has it some games and why they don't. I like spent way too much time figuring out why they blew out Florida and Missouri. They only had 13 combined missed tackles. Close games against, well, I'm sorry, games against Arkansas and Miss State. Arkansas was close for a while. 27 missed tackles. So I can't really figure out why the missed tackle problem seems to show up. And what you have to do is look at the wide receivers of LSU and say, can they shake people after catch? There are some stats out there that say missed tackles created after catch. Aaron Anderson's one of the best in the nation. So I believe the underneath game of Garrett Nussmeier passing, I believe the protection that he has is the edge because Connor Weigman won't have that same. And Le'Veon Moss is going to be expected to carry load against a Blake Baker LSU defense that is surprising every single week. I think there are small advantage for LSU, and I think it makes a difference in the game.
A lot of familiarity between these coaches too. It should be a fascinating game in a very hostile environment.